Jordy here for Cinecom.net and welcome again to my course. In this video lesson, I'm going to teach you how the toolbox works right here inside Premiere Pro. Now for that, we first have to add some clips to the timeline. So I'm going to open up my clips folder again from my project panel, and I'm just going to double click on any of these. Let's start with clip number 2, double click, and it's opened up in the source monitor right here. And from here again, I'm going to set an in and an out point. So somewhere right here, right before the action, set an in point with the I key on your keyboard, scrub some further on the end of the action and set an end point or an out point. Now we have seen that we can add this clip to the timeline by using one of these two buttons or by just dragging this whole picture right here into the timeline. But there's a different way, because for example, I don't want the sound of this clip. What I can then do is also drag only the video from this clip. And we can do that with this little icon right here. And you can see the tooltip coming up there, drag video only. So that means we can actually just drag this icon, the video track, only to the timeline. There we go. And now you can see that only that piece has been added to the timeline. And we can do the exact same thing as well with the audio. So this right here is a little waveform icon which says drag audio only. And so we can do that. Just drag that icon to your timeline. And now we've got the video and the audio separate. Now let's say that you would like to view the audio from this clip. Currently we can only see the video and hear the audio. But if you would also like to see the audio, you just have to click on this icon. Don't drag, only click. And now you can see the waveform of that audio from this clip right here. If you want to go back to that video view, just click on the video icon. I'm going to go back to my timeline here and just select everything that I have, and I'm going to press on the delete key so that it is gone, because I would like to have the video and the audio. So I'm just going to press the insert key from here. Now let's take a closer look at the toolbox right here inside Premiere Pro. Now the first thing we usually want to do is zoom a little bit in more on the timeline. And we've seen in the previous lesson that we can do that with this scroll bar right here from one of the outsides. But there's a different way of doing it, and that is by using the zoom tool from the toolbox right here. To select that tool, just click on it, and that will change your cursor, as you can see, to a magnifying glass with a plus sign inside. And when I'm just going to click inside my timeline now, we will zoom in, as you can see. Now, if you would like to zoom out, we have to hold down the Alt key. And by doing that, I'm holding down my Alt key now, you can see visually that my cursor has changed from a plus to a minus sign inside this magnifying glass. And when I'm going to click now, you can see that we are zooming out. But let's zoom back in. Now I would like to get my normal arrow again, so that I can select this clip. And for that, we just select the arrow tool or the selection tool from my toolbox. Click on it and we've got our arrow tool again, where we can select clips with. Now Premiere Pro is all about cutting and slicing clips. And one way of doing that is just by taking the razor blade tool from the toolbox. And that one can be found right here. Now all of these tools also have a short key on our keyboard, and you can find those short keys by just hovering over these tools, and next to it you will see here the razor tool. On the right you can see the C key on our keyboard. So let's do that now. I'm just going to press the C key, and you can also see that appearing in our cursor. Now there's a red line through our cursor, and that means we cannot use this tool on an empty space in track number 2. We have to hover our clip, and as you can see now, the tool has gone active. And when I'm going to click on a certain point now, you will see that we will actually just cut this clip in half. There we go. And when I'm going to grab my selection tool now again, I can move these two clips separately around. I have cut them into 2 pieces with the razor blade tool. Now maybe we were cutting out that last piece because we didn't need it. So what we can then do is select it and press the delete key on our keyboard. But you know, a different way of cutting off a piece was by just selecting the outsides. And you can see that my cursor is changing also right now to a red arrow. And when I'm going to click now, you will see that the outside has been selected. And once this is selected, we can actually just drag it bigger or we can drag it smaller. And that will do the exact same thing. We are just cutting off a piece from that clip, or we are bringing something back that we have cut it off before. In reality, what we are actually doing is just moving our out point from the source monitor right here to a different position. So you have to understand that we are never cutting out a piece from a clip to just throw it away. Now, every time we are using any of these tools or working from here or inside the timeline, we are always creating in and out points. Now let's continue on moving those in and out points. So we have seen that we can take the in or out point with our cursor like this and move that to the right side to move that in point. But this leaves us with a gap between these two clips. When I'm going to press Command Z or Ctrl Z now to undo my action, what I can do is actually take the Ripple Edit tool from here. And I'm going to hover my clips now with my cursor. You will see that this arrow is not red anymore, but yellow. When I'm going to select the in point from this clip and drag that one smaller, it will actually also delete the gap between it, as you've just seen. Let me just do that again and take a closer look to what happens to this clip. I'm making smaller and it's closing that gap. Let's take the selection tool again, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some more clips to the timeline. I'm going to select the second clip that we have here and delete that so that we don't have duplicated clips within the timeline. And let's select some more clips. So we were working on clip number 2, so let's now just head further with clip number 3 right here. Just a little bit further where the action is going to happen, and that is somewhere right here. Set an in point. A little bit further where she is moving and set an out point and insert this into the timeline. Let's drag it now. There we go. Also to track number 2, I'm going to head now to clip number 4 and from here also just select an in and an out point. And let's drag this one now to track number 2 above clip number 3, somewhere right here. Now, since clip number 4 is on top of clip number 3, and you have to see this as two papers, we can only see the paper who's laying on top, or just like here, we can only see the clip who's on top. So whenever I'm going to play this inside my timeline, you will see that clip number 3 will get interfered with clip number 4, because that one is actually on top. Let's take a look. There we go. We are now seeing clip number 4, while clip number 3 is actually still active. But I think that is pretty clear. Now let's take a further look inside our toolbox. What we can find are these two tools, the track selection tools. And when I've got one of these selected, you can now see that we've got two arrows. And that means that at a certain point where I am inside my timeline, I will select anything from that point. So when I've got my cursor right here after clip number 2 and I'm going to click, I've got everything selected in my timeline from all the tracks from that point. Now when I'm going to stand over here, I'm also going to select clip number 2 with it. There we go, as you can see. Now let's say that you only want to select the clips from one track. What you then have to do is hold down your Shift key. And once you have held down your Shift key, you now see that we only have one arrow going to the right side. So when I'm now going to click right here, you see that I only have selected all the clips in this track. And when I'm going to move a little bit backwards and start from clip number 2, you will see that I have now selected also that clip with everything inside that track. And we can also do that on track number 2, and so on. Now that is the only thing that this tool does. It helps us by selecting clips. And the other tool here in the toolbox works exactly the same, but then to the left side. Let me just select that for a moment. There we go. Now you can see the arrows going to the other side. And it works just exactly the same, as you can see. Now for the next tool, I'm going to delete everything in my timeline. And to be sure that I have everything selected, I'm going to take my selection tool, the track selection tool, and start from the beginning. I'm going to click and I'm going to press delete on my keyboard. And now I'm sure that I've got everything deleted in here. I'm going to take my selection tool again and move my cursor to the beginning. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clip where there is some faster action into it. And if I'm right, clip number 6 should hold that. Yes, indeed. So right here you can see this girl biking through the camera frame. And I'm going to start from this point. And I'm going to press the I key to set an in point and an O key right here where she is just leaving the frame. And I'm going to press the comma key from my keyboard to insert that into the timeline. There we go. Now, when I'm going to play this clip, you will see it running at a normal speed, but it's going pretty fast. Now, to set this to a slow motion, we've got a very nice tool for that. We've got the rate stretch tool right here inside the timeline. The short key for that is the R key on our keyboard. And once I've got that one selected, I can now just start from one of the outsides and just drag that clip longer, as you can see. Now in this case, I am not moving the out point. I'm actually making this clip longer in duration, so that means it will go in slow motion. Let us play it right now. Look at that. Beautiful slow motion. You can also see that indicating right here inside the clip. 41%, that's the actual speed now of that clip. And of course, if I'm going to drag this clip smaller as its original, it will now fast forward. Let me do that again. Look how fast she is. Amazing. Alright, enough with the rate stretch tool. Let us delete that clip. And now let's select a new one. We haven't seen clip 9 yet, I think. Let's set the in point from here where she is coming in into the frame and an out point somewhere right there. And also again, drag that into the timeline. There we go. Now the next tool that I want to show you is the slip tool right here. Now we all know that we have set an in point and an out point, and let's take a look at that. In the beginning we can see her just coming in into the frame, and on the out point we can see her somewhere here near the sign. Now, when I'm going to use this slip tool, as you can see, I'm actually going to move the in and the out point. The clip's position and the length of the clip will always stay intact. But when I'm going to move this now, I'm going to select the clip on here and I'm going to just scrub to the right side or to the left side. Let us do that. I'm going to start right here and drag to the right side. And now you will see two clips up in my program monitor. The left clip indicates the beginning position or the in point, and the right clip indicates the out point. So that means first we were starting somewhere in this position, but let's say that I want her out of the frame to start, so somewhere right here. Now that means also the out point will change because we are not changing the actual duration of this clip. I'm just going to let go now, and when I'm going to go back to the beginning of this clip, you will now see that she will start out the frame and she will come in. Since she has started a little bit earlier in this shot, the clip will also end a little bit earlier now. Because again, we are not changing the duration here, we are only changing the in and the out point. Let's take a look at a better visual presentation. This is our clip, and we have set an in and an out point. So the actual clip that we see in the timeline is only the purple highlighted piece. The other information around it is still there, but it's not part of the clip inside the timeline. Since that information is still there, we can make it appear anytime. And with the slip tool, we can move this selection. So as you can see, the clip length stays. But now in this case, the clip will start and end earlier. Now for the next tool, I'm going to take my arrow tool again, and I'm going to delete everything I have in my timeline again. And from my project panel, I'm now going to add some more clips to it. I'm going to drag number 2 into the timeline. There we go. I'm going to select clip number 3. There we go. And finally, I'm going to select clip number 4. Also here, there we go. And I want to zoom out a little bit more in my timeline so that we can see all the 3 clips in here. So clip 2, 3, and 4. Now with the slide tool over here, when I've got that one selected, I can again move one of these clips around. And the best visual representation is if I'm going to use the middle clip over here. Now when I'm going to move this clip either to the right or to the left side, you will see that the connection between these clips will always stay. Let's do that. I'm going to take clip number 3 and move it to the right side. And now I'm going to let go. And as you can see, clip number 4 is now a little bit shorter, and that's because I was overwriting it with clip number 3. And clip number 2 has now gone a little bit longer in duration, because we had to fill up this gap. Now the only thing again, what we're doing is clip number 3 will always stay intact. Nothing will change with it. We're just moving that clip around. But clip number 2, its out position or its out point is changing because it was attached to this clip. And the in point from clip number 4 was also changing because it was snapped to clip number 3. Let me do that again. I'm going to move clip number 3 even further, like this. And what's this? Suddenly I cannot move my clip any further than that. How does that come? Let me just let go here. At a certain point, and you will also see that with this little triangle over here, we are on the very end of the clip. And when we are on the end of the clip, we cannot move our out point any further, of course. Now later in this course, when we are going to work with transitions, we are going to bump into this problem again. And you will see how we can fix that. Now it's not such a big problem, we just have to know that we cannot move this clip any further, that it ends right here. And that's it for the slide tool. And now we've got one last tool, and that is the rolling edit. And for that, I'm going to take my selection tool first, and I'm going to delete the first clip from my timeline. And I'm going to select these 2 clips and move them to the beginning, so that we only have 2 clips in the timeline now. Now let's take that rolling edit tool, and we can find that one right here, rolling edit, and the short key for that one is the N key on our keyboard. And once I've got that one selected, I can now make a selection between 2 clips. We have seen that we can actually drag clips longer and smaller by just selecting the outside. But what we are doing right now with the rolling edit tool is select 2 points at the same time. So that means I've got the out point selected from clip number 3, and I've got the in point selected from clip number 4. So when I'm going to drag this to the right side now, I'm making clip number 4 shorter, and I'm making clip number 3 longer. And again, the only thing that is happening here is changing the in and the out points. It's that simple. And that's it for the toolbox within Premiere Pro. We've got 2 last tools in here, as you can see. One of them is very easy to explain, just the hand tool. Once you've got that one selected, you can just scrub to the left or to the right side. But since it's sometimes easier to just take the scroll bar down below here, I just suggest you use that one. So basically we are left with one last tool, and that's the pen tool. But that one is for later in this course when we are going to do some audio mixing. Now I've got one last advice for you, and that is to practice a lot on these tools. In the beginning you will see that editing will go very slow because you're having much trouble with these tools. But you will notice that after a while, once you get the hang of these tools, editing will actually go much faster. Definitely for when you know all the short keys to those tools. So watch this lesson a couple of times to understand how each of these tools actually work, and just practice a lot with them. In the next video lesson, it's going to be much fun because we are going to take a look at the video effects within Premiere Pro. So stay tuned for that, and thanks a lot for watching. Hey folks, Jordy here for Cinecom.net, and welcome again to my course. In this video lesson, I'm going to teach you how to work with effects on your clips, and that is probably one of the most exciting things within Premiere. Now, effects can be manipulated inside the effects controls, which we can find right here, effects controls. Now, this window here will tell us that we don't have any clip selected, as you can see right here. So what we have to do is select any clip from the timeline. And right here you can see that I have clip number 8 inside the timeline. Just click once on it to select it, and that will bring up several properties or parameters within the effect controls. Now, these are default values. Now, for a video clip inside the timeline, we have a video track and an audio track, which we have seen previously in this course. And that's also the reason why we have two categories in here. We've got video effects and we've got audio effects. Now, if you are going to drag in a photo inside the timeline, let's just do that. Right here, we've got photos. Let's add this pigeon to the timeline. There we go. And when I'm going to select the pigeon now, you will only see video effects. And that's pretty obvious because we don't have any audio track below that. So I'm just going to delete that photo again and select my clip number 8. So now here inside the effect controls, we've got 3 options here for the video effects. And the first one is the motion category. And we can open that up by pressing on this little arrow right here, which will show you all the parameters inside the motion property. For example, we have the parameter position, and the position has this value right here. So that means when I'm going to change this value by just clicking on it and typing in a different value, for example 500, and press the return key on your keyboard, you will now see that my clip has changed position. And that's because I have also changed a value of the position. Now, an easier way to change this value is just by standing on that value. And as you can see, my cursor also changed to 2 arrows. And that means I can either go to the left or to the right side by just clicking and dragging. And now you can see I'm changing this value, but at the same time, I can also visually see better what I'm doing with the position. Now, this applies for the horizontal position, and the other value will take care of the vertical position. And that's basically it to changing these parameters. We also got scale, which we can change. We also got the rotation, which we can change, and so on. Now let's say that we are changing something here and that we would like to reset it back to its default value. Now we could reset each parameter individual by clicking on this reset button on the right side of each parameter. Click on it, and now your rotation has been reset to its default value. But we can also reset the whole group of motion by clicking on the reset button of the motion, and that will now reset the position and the scale at once, or just everything within. Now, if we take a look at the motion property, you can see some sort of an icon on the left side of that. And that actually indicates that we can change some of these values within visually inside the program monitor. Now, for the opacity, we don't have that option. So let's take a look at what that actually does. Now, to activate that, the only thing you have to do is just select the category by just clicking once on it, on the motion. And right away, you can see some guidelines inside the program monitor. Now, these are guidelines that we all know. If you have ever worked with a photo inside Microsoft Word or any other application, you know that we can use these guidelines to change the scale of that clip. We can change the position by just dragging it around. And if we are going to stand on the outside, you will see that my cursor now changed to a rotation tool. And now we can also rotate that clip. And that's one way to visually change these values in here. Now let me reset that again by clicking on this button, and I'm going to collapse the motion because I would like to show you the effects library where we can find more effects, and actually effects that do something more than just changing the scale and position. And those things can all be found within the effects library down below here, the effects window. Now right in here we can find several folders. We've got the presets, which I'll come back later on in this lesson. We've got audio effects, audio transitions, video effects, video transitions, and finally, the lumetri looks. Now, the lumetri looks are actually effects that are coming from Adobe SpeedGrade, which is an application to make color corrections or color gradings on your video edits. Now, these effects are pretty limited, but I will come back onto it later in this lesson. For now, let's open up the video effects folder. And once I've got that open, you can find several categories in here. we can find an adjust folder, blur and sharpen, channel, color corrections, and so on. Let's open up one of these categories. For example, the blur and sharpen. Now from here we can find the actual effects. And let's take, for example, the fast blur effect. Now one way to add this to your clip is just by dragging this effect right here from the library to your clip, or you can also just instantly drag it to your effects controls. Let's for now just drag that to your clip itself. There we go. And now you can see that this effect has been added to the effect controls. Now we don't have that icon right here, which you can see in the motion in front of the fast blur, so that means we have to change the values inside here. We can't do that visually in the program monitor. Now again, these things work exactly the same. We've got a parameter, for example the blurriness, and we can change that value. Now let's just change that, for example, to somewhere around 40 right here. And right away you can see that parameter take effect. Now let's add a second effect to that clip. And I already know the name of that effect, which is going to be the roughen edges. And for that I can just make use of the search engine of the effects library. Just click on it and type in roughen. And already when I typed in rough, you can see roughen edges popping up right in here. And just drag that to your clip like that. And right away you can see the effect being applied right here. It leaves a thin edge around our clip. And if I'm going to scroll down inside my effect controls, you can see some more parameters popping up in here. Now I'd say just play around with these and see what they do. For now, I'm just going to increase the border so that you can see the effect a little bit better. Now, with the roughen edges, we can again see now that we have that icon next to it. And that means when we are going to select the roughen edges, we can also visually change something in the program monitor. And you can also see this asset here popping up. Now, this will only work with the offset parameter inside the roughen edges. So that's the only thing I can visually change in here. And if my computer now is going to be a little bit more faster, you can see it work more in real time. But that is also a problem. My Mac is having a lot of trouble to render these two effects, the fast blur and the roughen edges, in real time. I'm going to place my playhead in the beginning somehow, and I'm going to play this clip, and you can see that it will have much trouble to actually play it. It's already hanging right there. Now one reason here is because I have set my program monitor, the viewer, to full. And that is the playback resolution right here. Now we can lower that to, for example, a 1/4. And now the renderer will only render 1/4 of the resolution of the clip, which will make the playback go much faster. So when I'm going to play this clip now again, you will see that I will be able to play the clip more smoothly. Now, if you are still having much trouble with this, you can also pre-render your clip. And that means that Premiere Pro is going to save this clip to your hard drive and play it from there, so that your computer doesn't have to real-time render these effects anymore. And you can also see that with this red line above my clip, that I have added effects to it and that Premiere is going to have trouble playing this back in real time. Now, very easy. To render this clip, just press the return key on your keyboard. And that will open up this box right here, and right away you will see that Premiere is actually writing or saving this clip to your hard drive. And once it is done, take a look at this red line right here. It will then turn into a green line, which indicates that that clip has been rendered. And now it will smoothly play back. Alright folks, now when it comes down to the order of the effects right in here, it's very important to know how this actually works. The first thing that we're doing here is adding a fast blur onto the clip. And the next thing that we're doing is adding a roughen edges on top of the fast blur on top of the clip. Now, when I'm going to change the order of these two effects, and I'm just going to collapse these two effects so that you can see it a little bit better, I'm going to drag the roughen edges now above fast blur and look inside the program monitor what is going to happen. What we're doing now is we're adding a roughen edges effect to our clip, and on top of that we're adding a fast blur on the roughen edges on the clip. So that means we're also doing a blurriness on the roughen edges effect, as you can see. So sometimes you're trying to create something by mixing different effects, but you have trouble to actually accomplish what you're trying to look for. Then try to change the order of the effects, because sometimes that will drastically change things. Now let's say that we have created something awesome here. You know, the roughen edges, the fast blur, you know, this just looks amazing in here. Now what we can do is save these two effects for later use. So we are going to select the effects that we would like to save. I'm going to select roughen edges and hold down your Ctrl key for the Windows users or the Command key for the Mac users to select multiple effects. I've got these two selected now, right click and say Save Preset. That will open up a dialog box, and from here I'm going to give it a name. Let's say Jordy's preset, there we go. And now just press OK. Now where can we locate this preset? Well, inside the presets folder. But first remove the search keywords by clicking on this X right here. And now we can open up the presets folder, and from here we can find Jordy's preset. Now let's add a second clip to the timeline. I'm going to open up my project bike right here. Open up the clips, and from here let's just say clip number 2. I'm going to drag that instantly to my timeline. And if I have this selected now, I'm going to head over to the effects controls and drag my preset onto it just like any other effect. And right away, with the values that I have chosen in the parameters, you can see that these two effects, which I have saved in that preset, is now applied onto that clip as well. Now I'm going to delete these two effects to show you something else. I'm going to head back to my effect controls, and I'm going to collapse the presets folder because I want to show you the Lumetri looks. If I'm going to open up that, you will find again several folders in here. For example, the cinematic folder. Now the Lumetri looks gives you an option to visually see what the effect will look like somehow on the right side here. Now we can use these looks just as any other effect inside the library here. So let's take any of these, for example, right here, the day for night. I'm going to drag that onto that clip, and now it looks as this was shot during the night. But as you can see in my effect controls, I don't have any parameters which I can change. And for that, we actually have to go to Adobe SpeedGrade to change these parameters. Now that is for a different course, but remember that you are able to use these looks as a preset. They can definitely be useful to your film projects. Remember, just play around with these effects, drag some of them to your clips, change some parameters, and just see what they do. And eventually, after some time, you will find out how they actually work. You will remember several effects like the roughen edges. You will know that that effect exists, and you know how the parameters work, and so you are able to create nice looking things within Premiere. But folks, keep this always in mind. Premiere Pro is an editor. It's very strong in cutting your clips, organizing them in your timeline. But if you want to do visual effects, we need to work in Adobe After Effects. So don't expect too much from Premiere when you are going to work with these effects. We are able to mix several effects to accomplish something, but we will always be limited in Premiere for that. And also for the audio effects, well, they just work exactly the same. You can find several things in here, drag them to your clip, change some parameters, and just take a listen to what they do. In the next video lesson, I'm going to teach you how to work with transitions. So we'll take a look at the audio and the video transitions right in here. Thanks a lot for watching. Hey, what's up everyone? Jordy here, your instructor for cinecom.net, and welcome again to my course. In this video lesson, we are going to take a look at transitions. And that means video transitions, but also audio transitions. Now inside my timeline, you can see that I have two clips. This right here is the first clip, and this over here is the second clip. And between these two clips, we can make a transition. Now, from the previous lesson, we have seen that we can find the transitions inside the effects window. And from here, you can see we've got the video transitions and the audio transitions. But let's start with the video transitions. I'm going to open up that folder, and just like the video effects, we can again find more folders in here, which defines a category. For example, we've got 3D motion transitions, we've got dissolve transitions, iris transitions, page peel, etc. But let's start with the first one here, a 3D motion transition, and I'm just going to take the cube spin for now. And just like video effects, you can just drag this transition over to your timeline. But this time, not onto your clip, but between two clips, like so. And as you can see, we've got a selection where the transition is going to be, just let go, and the transition has been applied. And let's play this right now. You can now see that we have a beautiful transition. Now, if this transition might have gone too fast for you, then we can also take the outsides of that transition. And as you can see, my mouse pointer has changed into a different icon, and that indicates that I can now drag this transition longer, and when I'm now going to play it, the transition will go much slower. And also the same thing, of course, if you want it to go much faster. Now, this transition also has some options, and we can find those options by making sure that we have the transition selected. And then we can head over to the effects controls. And from here, you can see that we have some parameters which we can change. Now, one of the first parameters here is the duration. You can change that either here or also on the timeline itself, of course, as you've seen previously. Then the next option that we have here is to align the transition. And if I'm going to open up that drop-down menu, you can see that we can either choose between the center, the start, and the end at cut. Currently, it's somehow in the center. So that means the transition is taking up as much space from clip number 3 as well as clip number 4. Because it's somehow in the middle right here. It's not exactly, and that's the reason why it's now at custom start, but when I'm going to select center at cut, it's now more centered. Now basically a transition is extending the out point and the in point of your clips inside the timeline. And we can also see that because when I'm going to set my time indicator right here, which is standing on the transition, but we are already beyond clip number 3, but we can still see clip number 3 right here, as you can see, inside the transition. So if you are cutting a clip right here, because maybe someone is walking into the frame or something, keep in mind that if you are going to add a transition on top of it, that you could see that person coming into your video, because we are extending the out point here. And the same thing goes for clip number 4. When I'm going to place my time ruler right here, we can find that we can already see clip number 4 appearing right here, while we are actually not there yet. So that is what a transition is doing. So from here, if we are going to select a different alignment, for example, start at cut, you can now also visually see in your timeline that only clip number 3 is being extended to this point somewhere. If I place my time ruler back here before clip number 4, we don't see clip number 4 yet. It only starts right here and ends there. Now you can also just grab that transition and put it in some sort of a transition where we want it to. And so we can find some more options inside the effect controls of the transition. But most of them are pretty obvious. Like for example, the reverse mode, well, that actually means that the transition will now go from the right to the left instead of from the left to the right as we had previously. Now this is all great. We can create these nice looking transitions, but you know, this is maybe something that we are using a lot. And if we have to go to the effects controls each time, look for our transition and drag that to the timeline, it's just too much of a time consuming. So what we can do is set one of these as default, and from there we can actually link a key binding to it. So let's try that out. I'm going to delete the transition from here in my timeline. Just select it and press your delete key on your keyboard. And now let's select a different kind of transition. For example, the page peel. And let's say that we would like to set the page peel as the default transition. What we then have to do is just right click in here and say set selected as default transition. And now you can see that actually that little arrow which we see at the page turn right here has disappeared, which actually just indicates now that this is the default transition. But now how can we use this transition with a key binding in the timeline? Well, the only thing that you have to do is select a point between two clips in red like so, and now you only have to press the Command D for the Mac users and the Control D for the Windows users. And by doing that, as you now can see, the page peel has been set as the transition. And when I'm going to play this right now, you can now see a page peel transition. So folks, that is how we can create transitions and change some settings of it, and also how to set one of them as default so that we can bind them to a short key for later use. But now let's take a look at the audio transitions, because that is something that we definitely need in this example. Let's take a listen to the audio. In one shot, we don't hear that airplane, but in the second shot, we do. Now, because there isn't any transition between them, it's a very harsh cut. Let's take a listen to it again. So suddenly that airplane comes in. It doesn't feel natural. So what we have to do here is set a transition which goes smoothly from one audio track to the other. So for that, I'm going to close down the video transitions in my effects window and open up the audio transitions. And in here we can find only one folder, the crossfade folder. And when I'm going to open up that one, we can find 3 transitions in here. So let's just pick one. I'm going to take the constant fade, for example, and drag that not between 2 video clips, but between 2 audio clips, of course. And just let go here. And when I'm going to play this shot right now, you will hear that we have a more smoothly transition between the 2 shots, which is going to feel way more natural. There we go. Now the viewer doesn't feel that harsh cut anymore. And that, my dear friends, is how the transitions work within Premiere Pro. In the next video lesson, we are going to design some text or titles, and that is going to be very awesome. So definitely stay tuned for that. Thanks a lot for watching. Jordy here for Cinecom.net, and welcome again to my course. In this video lesson, we are going to design some text or some titles within Premiere. Now, to create a title, that is actually a generated item from Premiere. And we have seen that previously in this course that we can create such items inside our project panel with the new item button down below right here. And if we click on that, a new menu will appear, and from there we can choose Title. Click on it, and that will open up a box where we have to choose a name for that title, because the title will actually be a file. So give it a name, for example, Awesome Title, and press OK. And that will open up the title designer within Premiere. Now you can see in the project panel down below here that a new item has been added, and that is the awesome title file. Now from the icon right here, I know that this is actually a still image, so that means we can just drag this item later on inside our timeline. But for now, let's take a look at the title designer. The first thing that you will notice is that we can actually see the image in here from the timeline, and that means that the background of the title designer is linked to the timeline. So if I will scrub through my timeline here, you will also see that the video will change in the title designer itself. Now, if you want this to be a black background, then just move your indicator here in your timeline to an empty space, and so the background will turn black. Or you can also choose, if you are standing on your image here on a certain clip inside the timeline, to actually hide that. And you can do that with this button right here to show the background video or to not show the background video. But for now, I do going to enable that because it is a helpful feature so that we can see where to position our titles. So how can we create a title on here? Well, very easy. With the toolbox on the left side right here, we have a tool, the type tool, which we can click on to activate, then just click inside the canvas here. Now let's select the arrow again from the toolbox so that we can actually drag this text around and maybe make it larger, like so. We can also rotate it from the sides. These are all things that we have seen and which we are also used to from working with such things in Microsoft Word or any other application. Now, once we have created this text, on the right side, we can find all the properties for that text. So that is the font family. So from here, we can choose something else. For example, this Farah text font right here. We can also change things like the font size, or we can also just drag it bigger from the canvas itself. That is up to you. We can change the aspect, we can change the leading, kerning, tracking, and so on. And we can also change the color because white on a very bright background isn't that readable. So I'm just going to change this color to something reddish. There we go. We can also add strokes around it. You can choose an inner stroke or an outer stroke. So let's add an outer stroke. There we go. Now we've got a black stroke around the text. We can also change that color to something greenish maybe. We can also add shadows from here, a shadow onto that text. There we go. Change maybe the size a little bit, the spread, and so on. Now these are all tools in here on the right side which are pretty obvious. My suggestion here is to just play around with these things. These are all things that we see in any other application where we can change the style of any text. Now let's say that you are having trouble to create some kind of a text that suits you the best. Then you can also make use of the presets, and you can find them down below here. These are all presets, or actually pre-styles, that were created by Premiere itself. And the only thing that you have to do is choose one and just click on it, but of course make sure that you have your text selected, and that will transform it into such a style. So let's just select several of them so that you can see what they actually do. Now, from the toolbox right here, you can see that we have some more options. We also have the option to create vertical text. We can also drag a text area or a vertical text area. These are pretty obvious, but there are some things here which might not be that obvious and do pretty cool things, like these pen tools over here. Let me just grab one of those pen tools. When I've got it selected, I can actually just click once to create a new point, click somewhere else, and hold my mouse button down so that I can drag this out. And by that, I can actually create a path or draw lines within the text editor. Now, for those of you who have already worked with Photoshop, they might know the pen tool and how we can actually create such paths. Just click and drag to define how your line should look. Now, the style of this line is currently the same as the text, but here again, exactly the same. Take back your selection tool and select any of the preset styles down below here with your line selected, of course. Or you can also change it customly on the right side with the Title Properties panel. Now, what else can we find in here? We can also create shapes like a rectangle. Click on it and drag the rectangle that you would like to see. Or we can also create rounded corner rectangles. We can also create circles, wedges, or just normal lines. Now, let's say that we have created this text right here. Awesome text, and I would like to align this perfectly in the middle. Let me just make that a little bit smaller, like so. Now, in order to align this exactly in the middle, I can somehow try to aim it, but it won't always be exactly in the middle. But for that, we have some neat buttons. Let me just place that back somewhere out of the center. And down below here, we can find those two buttons. We've got one button to align it vertically in the center. Click on it, and now it's perfectly in the middle, vertical. And the second button will center it horizontal. And by clicking on these two buttons, we are now sure that the awesome text is exactly in the center of our canvas. Now, while designing a text inside the titler, you might bump into things where you want to position this text, which we have created first, above the rectangle, which we have created later on. Now, what you can then do is either select the text or the rectangle and just right-click on it. Now I've got the rectangle selected. And from here we can say arrange, and we can say bring to the front, which will make sure that the rectangle will go all the way to the front, and you just have to see this as a stack of papers. For the people that work in Photoshop, they know how layers work, and this case is exactly the same. Or we can also send it to the back, or we can also send it all the way to the back, or just one position backwards. Now in this case, when I'm going to say send all the way to the back, you will then see that the rectangle will go behind the text. And that is how you can arrange all the elements inside the title designer. We can also select multiple elements and drag them to a different position. With all of them selected, you can also rotate them, both at the same time. Now let's see what else we can do in here. When I'm going to right-click on an empty space in this canvas, I can say Graphic, Insert Graphic. And from here, we can actually browse on our computer to a certain photo. And right here, I've got jordi.png. And when I'm going to select this photo and say Open, it will actually be imported inside the titler of Adobe Premiere. And again here, this here was a transparent photo, and it's taking the style that I had selected. So also here on photos, we're able to select a certain style. So let me just select several of them so that you can see what they actually do. Again, the same thing, we can also apply a custom style on it if you work here on the right side. And that, my dear friends, is how the titler works within Adobe Premiere. And once you are finished with your title, the only thing that you have to do is just close this window. No worries, all these things are being saved in real time. So right here in the project panel, I've got my title. And as any other clip inside my project panel, I can now just drag it over to my timeline, either on top of my video clip, as you can see now, or also I can drag it next to that clip. But now you have to keep in mind that the background is of course going to be black because we don't have any other video track below it. Now, if you would like to change something of this title, the only thing that you have to do is double click either on the clip right here inside your timeline or on the title file in your project panel. So let's just do that, double click on it, and right here now you can make the adjustments the way that you would like to. Now let's assume that this creation here is so awesome, and you would like to save this for later use. You can then save this as a template, and that is very easy by just clicking on this button right here, and that will open up the templates. Then to save this as a template, you have to go to this button on the right side here, this menu, click on it, and say Import Current Title as Template. That will open up this window to give this template a name, and let's name this Awesome Template. Press OK, and it's now added to the user templates. Press OK, and when I'm now going to delete everything in here in my title designer, I can now recall this template by going back to the templates window, select the template that you have saved, and press OK. And there we go, the saved template has appeared back. Now let's close this titler again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this awesome title above my clip and make it a little bit shorter so that it fits the clip that I have down below. Now let's say that this is a movie edit, and on the end of that movie I would like to have these rolling credits of everyone who worked with me to make my film. So let's create a new title. I'm going to go back to the new item button down below here and say title. And I'm going to name this Ending Credits, and then just press OK. Now from here, we actually have to say to Premiere that this is going to be a rolling text. And for that, we have to go up here to this button, to the roll and crawl options. Click on it, and we are going to say that this title type is not going to be a still image as we had created first, but it's going to be a rolling title. And we're going to say that it has to start off the screen and that it has to end off the screen, so that the text will roll in from below and roll off the screen above here. Press OK, and now let's take a look at that title clip inside the project panel. You can now see that the icon has changed to a movie file, so we no longer have a still image now. So that means the text that we'll input in here will actually be a little movie file. So let's do that. I'm going to take my type tool, click in here, and let's give some credits. Directed by Jordi Vanderput, which is my name. Edited by you, that's you. And let's say one more thing, the colorist, which is the guy who actually changes the color or does the color gradings of the films, and the colorist is your best friend. There we go. Now let's style this a little bit better now. I'm going to select all this text in here, and I'm going to align this in the center with this button, and that will actually center the text. Now these are just normal buttons as we can find in any text editor. Then next, I'm going to highlight some text in here. So the directed by here can be in a bold. Also, the edited by can be in bold. And colorist has to be in bold. There we go. And now we can see a little bit better of a difference between the function and the name. Then once you are done, you can just close this title and drag the ending credits inside your timeline. And when I'm going to play this now, you will see that the text will actually roll from below to above. Now, if this is going too fast for you, let me just zoom out a little bit more on my timeline. You can actually drag this clip longer, and that will make sure that the text is rolling slower, because it will always start off the screen and end off the screen. And the time that it needs to do so is something that you can define by just dragging this clip longer or smaller. So when I'm now going to play this again, you will see that the text will go a little bit slower. And of course, if you want to, you can create a wall of text in here. So that's it for designing a title. You know how the titler works now. My suggestion here is to play a bit with the settings on the right side. So let me just open up this title again. So on the right side here, the title properties, they really speak for themselves. So try to play with these settings and find out what they all do. I want to thank you a lot for watching again, and in the next video lesson we are actually going to animate some stuff inside Premiere. And I must say that that was one of the things that I was thrilled about most when I was learning Premiere for the first time. So definitely stay tuned for the next lesson.